Hey guys, welcome back. Eric Smith here with another review of my weekly grades for the Miami Dolphins offensive line. It's a breath of fresh air to be doing this video after a win and also heading into a bye week where things can slow down and we can enjoy this victory for a couple of weeks. One thing I've learned over the years doing these grades is that things usually aren't as good or bad as you might think if you walk away only looking at the television broadcast. Many times, games in the NFL are decided by one or two key plays that may or may not be at the end of the game. One thing certainly consistent, though, if the Dolphins lose a game, there's a very vocal part of the fan base that falls back into the narrative that this offensive line is awful. And the reality is that in a vacuum, the offensive line is generally one of the more consistent groups from week to week. I'm not saying consistently great, but they're also not consistently awful, regardless of what the scoreboard says. And I'm not trying to talk down on the offensive line, but when we start looking at the grades for this week, you're going to find three guys that graded out pretty close to their season average, one who graded way better, and one who took a step back. The biggest change this week was the change in play calling that reduced the frequency that they were asking the tight ends and the wide receivers to block on the edge and get the ball outside. As you can see, this week's grade for the offensive line as a whole is a notch up from the season average, but it's not drastically different than where they've graded on average this season. And this is the second time this season that the Dolphins have played the entire game with the starting lineup that was expected to start the season. It probably shouldn't come as a surprise that this game was their second highest grade of the season behind week one. In parentheses, you'll see the average of the players' grades for this season so far. So Liam IKenberg was the player who took a step back this week and ended up with the lowest grade of the week with a grade of 6.86. There was obviously the sack on the first drive of the game, which kind of set the tone for the fan base's view of Liam for the remainder of the game. But that one really wasn't even that bad. I have some stuff on my X timeline discussing that play, and just how bad Liam was on that play is debatable because something was completely jacked up with that protection where it looked as though he expected to have help from Brewer. Even though this was a bad game for Eichenberg, I don't expect this to become the trend because it's just not what we've seen in the past from him, despite the way that he's been viewed by a lot of fans. All right, as we get into the film review for Eichenberg, this is the first play we've got, and this is just going to be him getting knocked back into the lap of the quarterback. This was obviously a quick passing play, but even on a quick passing play, you expect to have a little more protection than what Liam gave on this play. And then our next one, we're going to have Liam pulling to the left, and he is going to be looking to kick out number 48. And as you can see here, doesn't take a good angle. You know, when you go back to the basics of pulling and kicking, you know, you'll hear them talk, pull left, hit left, meaning with their left shoulder. And as you can see there, it kind of looks like Eichenberg's trying to lean in with his left, but lowers his head and misses his target almost completely. And what that ends up with is Mostert having to bounce the play unnecessarily. Had Liam gotten the good kick out block there, there was a nice play or a nice lane for this play to develop. And then, because I didn't want to be all bad for Eichenberg, here's a play where he's just showing some good effort. So he's helping out with Jackson, realizes Jackson doesn't need the help anymore, flips his head around, looking for work, He does a good job of getting back into the play and preventing a quarterback hit here. Again, not a huge positive and doesn't overshadow the rest of the bad stuff that he did, but it certainly wasn't all bad for IKenberg. Austin Jackson's our next one. He has graded pretty well all season with only one game, which was last week, being under an 8.0, and even that was just barely. This week he came in at an 8.19. Games like the Patriots are the type of games that really show why Miami is willing to turn a blind eye to the issues that Jackson has in pass pro. His ability to get movement and find targets in space is better than what you'll find across most of the league. When things are going even pretty well for the offense, it's not that difficult to avoid putting him in unfavorable positions in the passing game. Okay, so we're looking at Austin Jackson here at right tackle, and this was in the third drive of the game on the first play, and this is going to be a duo concept, and you can see just how well Jackson does getting off the ball and driving his defender down the field. You can see that that's 5 yards, and that's not easy to do in the NFL to take a defensive tackle and to change the line of scrimmage. And as you can see there, Julian Hill's helping a little bit. I think that had we got a better block from Ingold on that play, could have had a nice gain. Some will point to Robert Jones on the left side there, but I feel like had Mostert been able to stay going directly forward, that Jones would have been fine because that defender was essentially taking himself out of the play. But really, like I said, the focus I wanted to put here is Austin Jackson and his ability to get movement in small spaces. And then looking at Austin Jackson again here, I think this was the only zero play that I had graded for Jackson this week. And this is going to be outside zone to the right. And as you can see, Jackson just gets a little too aggressive going after this one, gets sidestepped by the defender, and ends up missing. And the defender goes to the inside. That ends up slowing down Ingold from being able to help Waddle on the edge, which we saw him do a few times in this game. And that, had Ingold been able to help Waddle, then this would have been a play that would have gone for a gain, of more than it was. But you'll see this occasionally from Jackson is that because of how aggressive he is, because of how good he is at moving that point of attack, every once in a while you're going to get a play where he's just a little bit too aggressive and the defense is able to take advantage of that. All right, Aaron Brewer continues to be a steal for the Dolphins at his salary. He's not a perfect player, but Miami isn't paying him to be a perfect player. This performance was a little lower than the high level that we've come to expect from Brewer, but it was still a very good game, ending up with an 8.52. New England did find some success playing with a nose tackle over Brewer, but that's something that I feel teams will do less when Tua is back in the lineup and they can't afford to spend 1/11th of the defense on an interior run clogger. All right, so we're looking at Brewer here at center, and this is going to be a zone run to the left side. We're going to see Brewer trying to reach that A-gap defender. You can see he does a good job getting even with that defender and then dips that right shoulder and continues to fight to the play side. And this alone would be a pretty good block because he's getting around to the front side of that defender. But then Brewer's going to take it a step further and picks up a linebacker too. So, because of the effort that he puts into this play, he's able to block two defenders by himself, and that allows Achane to get a bit of a cutback there and get something out of this play on the first drive of the game. So not blowing the guy off the line of scrimmage, but just the effort to continue to get to that play side is what sets Brewer apart, and that kind of effort puts him into a position where he's able to take care of two defenders on one play. All right, and then our bad play for Brewer, there's not too many of them. but we're still watching Brewer here at center. And what we're going to see is a twist between 99 and 53. And you'll see that Robert Jones actually knocks number 53 a little bit off path, which lets him run by Brewer almost untouched. Um, Brewer did get a 0 for this grade, and part of the reason for that is that because of Brewer's stature, when he's trying to absorb a stunt like this, he really has to sink his hips and anchor down more than a bigger player would have to. So just that little knockoff path by Jones is enough that this turns into what probably would have been a stalemate by Brewer, but Jones knocks that defender off and he is essentially an untouched blitzer. This is also the type of play that doesn't show up as much when you're watching it live because Huntley completes this pass. I think it was for a first down to Mostert. So, it doesn't get replayed, but this is still the type of play that when we're grading on a play-by-play basis is still going to get factored in. All right, then we got Tron Armstead, who returned to the lineup this week and didn't skip a beat, coming in at a 8.90, which is fairly normal for Armstead. His week 3 performance drags his season average down, but I expect that he'll continue to climb back to normal if he stays healthy, which obviously for Armstead is a big if. Okay, so now we're going to look at Teron Armstead here at left tackle, and what we're going to get is a outside zone run to the left, and kind of like we talked about with Aaron Brewer on the play that we looked at with him, Armstead does a really good job of getting off the ball quickly, basically off the snap. He's even with the defender right now, and he continues to fight that inside shoulder through the chest of the defender to get that position that allows him to seal that edge and gives Wright enough that he can cut through there. And that's a really good job by Ingold coming off the edge and also by Wright pressing this the whole way out. But if Armstead doesn't get around this defender and get as much as he did, then this play's dead in the water. So this is the type of play that when we talk about the athleticism needed by the offensive tackles in this offense. It may not look like a lot, but this is a really difficult block for offensive linemen in this scheme. All right, and then for our negative play for Armstead, again here at left tackle, this is going to be a inside zone to the right. And what we're going to see here is that Mostert is going to be reading this defensive lineman here. So as the ball snapped, you can see the leverage of that lineman is to the outside. So his eyes are going to go here. The leverage there is also to the right. So this is an automatic cutback read for Mostert, and that's why he's cutting back right away. As he's cutting back, again, reading leverage, looking at where Teron Armstead is here, this should bend back further. And that's what Mostert tries to do, and that's where Armstead gets the 0 on this grade because he's not able to maintain that leverage and to keep that defender to the inside. And this isn't something that we see, a ton from Armstead. He usually does a really good job with this. But again, grading every play, this is one that's going to show up where he definitely could have done better on that play. And if you haven't figured it out yet, Robert Jones is going to be our highest graded player of the week. So this play here is kind of a combination highlight for both Armstead and Jones on the left side there. And you can see that as they're coming off the ball here on this outside zone, the idea here is that Robert Jones is going to take over this defender, and Teron Armstead is going to help just as much as he has to in order to climb to that linebacker that's going to be flowing. And that's exactly what we see here. Good head position by Robert Jones getting across that defender. Good job by Armstead staying parallel to the line of scrimmage so that he can slide off of this block. A nice seal opens up that lane where Wright doesn't even have to change his path. So that's a good play by both Armstead and Jones. And then, like I said, this last play was a nice segue into our highest graded player of the week, Rob Jones. This was a much needed 1 week rebound for Rob Jones after he had gotten to the point where he could barely be considered playable. Even I was suggesting benching him, even though the next best option was going to be Lester Cotton. This was Jones's highest graded game of the season, with week 1 coming in as the runner up. In week 2, he suffered a shoulder injury, possibly a dislocation. In week 3, he ended up having to play beside a combination of Lamb and a struggling Armstead in that game. And then in week 4, he was paired up with Patrick Paul on the left side of the line. Nothing against Patrick Paul or Kendall Lamb, but neither of those players are Tron Armstead, and Rob Jones didn't spend the time building chemistry with them like he did with Armstead since the opening days of camp. All right, so not a perfect day from Rob Jones, but not far from it. Here's one of those plays that wasn't, as good as it could have been for Rob Jones. And this is just him trying to seal that defender inside. I think he expected a little bit more of a, play side reaction by a defensive tackle and overshot a little bit, forced Mostert to alter his path a little bit. Um, so not a super costly play by Jones individually, but certainly one that could have been better. All right, and then last one here for Jones. This is going to be a long trap to the right play action type play, even though there's not really any backfield action. But I included this one on here because if you look at how much space that Rob Jones is working with, it kind of looks like a loss from the beginning. But Jones does a decent job of setting up in a way that entices that defensive end to go to the inside. And you can see that he's prepared to put his foot in the ground, flip his hips, and get back inside to seal that defender inside, which is going to allow Huntley to easily escape that pocket. So, not Robert Jones is never going to be a fantastic athlete, but I thought that this play was a good example of, him showing a bit of maturity in understanding his athleticism and setting himself up in a way to succeed in space where it's not a great situation for him. All right, that's it for this week. You can find me on Twitter or X where I share more all 22 films and respond to as many comments as I can. If you're looking for more video content from me, check out the Scouting Combine podcast on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, where Hassan Patel and I check out all 22 film from the Dolphins as well as their upcoming opponents. And of course, leave a comment below if you have anything to add to this video. Enjoy the bye week coming off a win, and I'll be back with another one of these videos after the next game.